Okay, hello and welcome to this All You Need Is a Ball webinar. This week I am joined by two pioneers in the football industry who have created and continue to create some of the very best practice in how football can be used to develop people and communities. Pete and Steve, the founders of Kick4Life, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure.
Great to be here.
Cool. So the main purpose, as we know, but for everyone watching, the main purpose of this is to spread the word, first and foremost, about the great work that football can do. But again, really shine a light on what you guys have set up. I know a lot of the journey, but also I'm intrigued to hear it in greater detail now. So yeah, we want to inform wider audiences about how they could get involved in the future into to using football in a powerful way to help inspire young people. Yeah, and demystify a bit of this sector as well, so more people can hopefully understand how it works. So let's get cracking. So I'm going to firstly start, let's come to you, Pete, maybe. Could you kick it off by maybe just top line introducing what it is that Kick4Life does as succinctly as you can?
Yeah, I mean, in the very most basic form, we use football as a tool for social change. So primarily we use football to engage youth in health and education activities. We're a little bit unique in that we are a charity. We're three legal entities. We're a charity first and foremost, but we also have social enterprises and we have a football club entity, which is more like a traditional football club. It's evolved a lot over the years, but primarily we've very much focused starting out as a health-focused organisation. As we'll get into in a little bit, I'm sure we work exclusively in Lesotho, which has the second highest HIV prevalence in the world at 23.2%. And when we first started the organisation, we were very much focused on using football to tackle that issue, whether it be providing basic education messages around HIV, to getting youth tested and then referring them on to wider medical support. But we've certainly evolved huge amounts since we first started the organisation in 2005 to where we are today. I'm sure we can get into that in a little bit. I don't know if Steve's got to add on to a basic summary.
Yeah, so just to emphasise really those three parts that Pete mentioned, which are all interlinked and which all support our ultimate goal of social change through football. So Kick4Life as the charity, which does the programmatic work, the social enterprises, which generates income, as well as providing training and employment opportunities. And then thirdly, the football club, which is like a social enterprise, but which is out there as a vehicle to promote Kick4Life as an organisation in Lesotho and throughout the world.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think your names within the sector go far. I think everyone's heard of the Fleming brothers, which is a great sign. No matter where you are in the world, it's a shining project. How on earth did you start to create something like this? Can we go back to right at the beginning? Again, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for many years, so I know some of this, but for the purpose of everyone, how did this adventure begin for you guys?
So Steve, I think you can take that one, then I'll add on in.
Yeah, so the organisation started in 2005, but I'd actually go back further than that and say we grew up in Southampton in the UK, and one of the key themes of our life growing up was sport and particularly football, both playing it with our friends, playing it at school, playing it in the street, and also watching the Stars down the road at the Dell Southampton's stadium. And
do you have Stars at the Dell? Was there Stars there?
There was Matt Letizia and a few others. And yeah, so growing up, we loved sport. I think we understood that its benefits on an individual basis and its benefits on a community level to bring people together. I don't think at that stage, obviously, we hadn't consciously thought about sport as a tool for achieving structural social change. But jump forward 15 years. Personally, I was working in London, doing a job in marketing, which was okay, but I wasn't exactly hugely passionate every morning when I was getting out of bed to go and do it. And I came up with this idea of what was meant to be a one-off challenge to dribble a football over a long distance. And we came up with a plan. I got Pete involved to dribble a ball for 250 miles across Africa to raise money for an AIDS orphanage over there. So we spent 6 months training and planning. And it became a huge thing in our lives. And then ultimately we went over and did this challenge with some of our friends and family. And it was a truly life-changing adventure, dribbling a ball across a country we'd never been to before, and seeing really how young people in particular responded to football and the potential it had to engage and inspire people. So I think even before we came back to the UK after that trip, we knew that that was just the start of something else, and that's the origins of Kick4Life. And when we got back, we started registering as a charity, and yeah, I mean, Pete can take up the story there, because it wasn't long until he actually then moved out to Lesotho to start a project on the ground.
Yeah, well, I'd say one of the most common questions we get now for people who are interested in starting an organisation like this or any other type of charities, how do you start, and the logistics of it, where do you get your first funding? And that we were very fortunate. So we ultimately decided on Lesotho. And again, that's another one of the common questions, why Lesotho, a country that most people haven't even heard of, let alone been to. And we had an idea of what we wanted to do for the project, like I said earlier, very much health focused, using football as a tool to engage youth. So we wanted to go to a country where there was a serious health issue. We had our heart set on Africa, that had already been predetermined. We wanted English speaking for logistical reasons. We wanted to go to a country where there wasn't something similar happening. So we did look at Malawi, because that would have been a natural part of the progression where we'd done the challenge. But there was a couple of other projects flying around that were similar. And the last one we were quite adamant on was we wanted to engage the National Football Association of that country. So I think by the time we narrowed it down, it was Namibia, Swaziland, Lesotho, Botswana, perhaps one other. And Lesotho were the only ones that came back to our initial inquiry. So it was probably around 2006. Actually, an important part of the story is around this time, Prince Harry had just done his gap year in Lesotho and was setting up an organisation called Sentabale, which is exclusively focused on helping orphans and vulnerable children in Lesotho. So we'd actually contacted them, say, look, this is what we're doing. It was one-man band pretty much at that time, Sentabale, and they loved the concept of what we were doing. And they were very generous in supporting the whole research process. So that enabled us to go out on the research process into Lesotho for a couple of weeks in mid-2006, where we cemented that we were actually going to move forward with a project in Lesotho and started making some more concrete plans. And then the big thing, the other legacy of our initial partnership with Sentabale, was they helped us get our initial funding. So again, we were in the right place at the right time. You can definitely say that, because it's definitely difficult to get that initial pot of funding in a competitive market, which the charity sector is, when you're not actually doing anything on the ground. So they enabled us to get funding from the Vodafone Foundation, and that enabled us to start the project on the ground in 2007.
Amazing. You said being fortunate a couple of times, but to be honest, there's a lot of graft that's needed to make fortune happen. So don't underestimate that. But yeah, I get that. Sometimes it is just a timing thing, right? And you're in the right frame of mind with the right people, and things emerge. Yeah. Okay, so from that first pot that you found, how does that become sustainable? How do you, year on year, I guess, innovate? Because you have to each year think freshly about how you're going to create the sustainable funding, right?
Yeah. I guess I'm taking up the story to explain the next step is, so Pete moved out to Lesotho with that initial funding from the Vodafone Foundation, which was enough really to get started and operate for maybe 6 months or a year. But we immediately realised that there was a need to diversify our funding base and to bring in different pots of funding as well. We had another moment of good fortune early on when Fabio Capello came out to Lesotho within that first part of the partnership with the Vodafone Foundation. He was a New England manager at the time, and he came over with about 40 members of the British press to get to know them. And they came along to one of our testing events. And it gave us some fantastic profile. He was really inspired by what he saw at the event, and it went all over the British media. It was in double page spreads and a lot of the newspapers, on Sky Sports News. And of course, that was great for our partnership with Vodafone, and that actually laid a foundation for them to support us for another 3 years. But yeah, when that was locked in, we then started to look around to build other partnerships locally on the ground. So, for example, UNICEF, GIZ, German Development Organisation, at the same time, we were starting to diversify our fundraising in the UK. So running trips out to Lesotho, encouraging people to do running events for us and all sorts of other things, community-based fundraising. And to try and diversify. We hadn't at this point thought about social enterprise. That was a bit further down the line, but we did recognise that if we were going to survive and exist for a long period, we had to have more than one big funder. And at the beginning, they were probably sort of 80% of our funding, and that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, I'd definitely say the support from Vodafone was incredible in those early years, and they've supported us on and off for many years. But it possibly did create a slight sense of complacency to have one funder 80% coverage for the first 3 or 4 years of your existence. We were fortunate in that being in Lesotho, when you're in Lesotho, it's harder to get the big funding from large corporations because there's no corporate angle for most of these organisations. But actually within Lesotho, there's less competition, if you like, for those same dollars. So when we approached UNICEF, when we approached the other UN agencies, etc., once they knew that we were able to deliver on promises made, on our proposals and on their targets, then they actually started coming to us with ideas and proposals, which is a very nice situation to be in when you're trying to diversify your funding streams.
Yeah, and as Pete says, we were quite unique in Lesotho. There were no other sport for development organisations in the country. So approaching organisations such as USAID and UNICEF, we were bringing something that nobody else was offering. And I think that was a result of we chose Lesotho for that reason. And it certainly paid off, I think.
Yeah, and another interesting thing about that first 18 months on the ground, I would say, is the PR piece was like, it will probably never ever be again. Like Steve mentioned, we had pretty much every chief football writer in the whole of the UK coming to one of our events for an entire day. We had Prince Harry come to an event 2 or 3 times in that year, and then we had a PR piece with the whole England team, Beckham. So we must have thought this PR thing was so easy, or getting all that in the first year. Obviously, that's not the reality moving forward, but that definitely helped position us in the sector. You know, whether we were doing a good job or not, the perception was, oh, these guys have got something going in Lesotho. So I think that's definitely helped to attract funders over the years.
I think it's a mindset thing as well, though, isn't it? I think people, when they think about charity and they think about the doing good sector in general, they don't think of it as a business. They think of it about the cause all the time, and it's about the sob story or the problem, not the innovation. And all it takes is a bit of a drive and spark, and you can function probably better than many corporates because you don't have the hangover of the policies and red tape that they have to follow. You've got complete freedom to create, right? And that's probably helped with some of your developments recently. So let's fast forward a bit, because now we've come into the sort of more now, and I know you've written book, if not books. You've got a consultancy going now. You've got a stadium build coming up. Tell me a bit about some of those projects and again, how you innovated. How did you come up with these ideas?
Yeah, well, the next big phase was the social enterprises. So I spoke a little bit earlier about that we wanted to diversify our funding streams. And I think we came to recognise that it was tough for charities to be sustainable. So even if you had 3 or 4 different funders providing grants over different periods of time, so you might have a 1-year grant with one funder or a 3-year grant with another, these were always time-bound things, which even if the project went incredibly well, the priorities of the funder might change or their funding availability might change, and that project may then have to come to an end, even if it's doing fantastic work. So we wanted to find new ways of sustaining the organisation that would give us a bit more flexibility to develop the programmes that we wanted to develop and to maintain them. Even if a funder came to the end, we'd be able to carry on doing the work that we wanted to. And that's where really social enterprise emerged from. The timing again was good. So in 2010, the World Cup was held in South Africa, and FIFA did their main legacy scheme for that tournament was called 20 Centres for 2010. And they were building 20 facilities across Africa that would have a 5-a-side football pitch, an education and health building. And we applied for that and were successful in being selected to host a centre in Lesotho, which is absolutely fantastic. And we found a great position in the capital city, Maseru. And right from even before it was built, we recognised there was some potential here to use the facility to create our own income generating enterprises and businesses, with all profits reinvested back into the charity. And Pete, having lived out there and spent a lot of time studying the local market, identified an opportunity for a restaurant and a hotel. So quite different to anything we'd done before. But using that initial investment from FIFA and the plot of land that we had, we were able to get funding in from a number of other local companies to develop a building which would eventually have a restaurant and a hotel in it, with two main drivers. Firstly, as I mentioned, to generate income, add a new part to our sustainability model. So we had grants and sponsorship and fundraising activities, and now we had social enterprise. So generating our own money that we could decide how that would be applied to our social causes. And the second reason we did it was to create training and employment opportunities for young people. So lots of the participants coming through Kick4Life were entering into a job market with 26% youth unemployment and very little prospects. But actually, by creating our own enterprises, we were creating jobs, creating training opportunities where we could develop young people in a really supportive environment, and that's proved to be successful. Many now work for us, and many have worked for us and gone on to work for other companies in the country.
Brilliant.
Yeah, an important add-on to how we managed to get the funding in Lesotho around the World Cup was the way we branded it, if you like, was this project is Lesotho's legacy to the Africa World Cup. There's very much a feeling in Africa at the time that, ownership, this is our World Cup, not just South Africa. And obviously it was tremendous that we were able to be one of the 20 organisations to get a centre. So Lesotho as a whole was pretty excited about that. We got lots of decent press coverage. And so we were able to go to the local corporates and say, do you want to be part of this? And it was historically trying to get construction funds has been one of the toughest things we found. But on this occasion, they were very much willing to be part of it. And it was very important to note, and if I was watching this, trying to learn about how you start an organisation, like how do you get money from FIFA? And being part of the Street Football World Network has been a critical piece of our development, not only learning from other organisations. When we first started, Grassroots Soccer was a brilliant partner of ours in terms of learning about how to educate kids around HIV. But Street Football World really has helped develop partnerships on a level that we probably wouldn't have been able to without that support.
And I think also important to point out that process of, I jumped from getting that initial centre to having a hotel and restaurant. I mean, that was several years and a huge learning curve, and bringing in different experts from around the world, training up young people who had no skills to being a part of a superb team. That took a long time. It was actually 2014 when those enterprises opened. So from being selected to host a centre to opening the enterprises was a 4-year process.
Right, yeah, things don't happen quite overnight, but but no, it's a good point, and very fair mention of Street Football World there and the network. So we're going to post some links underneath this video. Do check out all of the partners and to see some of this project in action. Okay, so far we've talked a lot about fortune still and hard work, but there must have been some rocky patches. So what are the challenges that you felt that have really stuck out over the years, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, do you want me to take that one, Pete? I think one of the biggest sort of question marks we've had along the road is where to take the organisation, and I think it's more about mistakes that we haven't made and avoided, which has been really important for us. So even early on, in the first few years, we were obviously very ambitious. We wanted to take Kick4Life to other countries. We had this plan that maybe we could set up projects in other parts of Africa. Even we could take Kick4Life to South America, have a project in Brazil. The World Cup was there in 2014. Maybe that was a good opportunity. And sometimes we got quite far down the line in exploring these possibilities. But I think when it came to the crunch, always we realised that what we wanted to do was create something really, really phenomenal and world-class. And I think that hopefully that's what we've been able to do in Lesotho. And I think if we had gone down the route of creating projects in other countries around the world, then we would have lost an element of quality in what we've done. So instead of growing geographically, we've diversified in terms of what we do. So we've moved from health, doing education, employability, climate, and we've grown from just doing programs to doing social enterprises. And now we've grown to being a consultancy as well, which does give us that global aspect, but without actually parachuting into another country and trying to set up from scratch. So I think in terms of lesson learned, that was hugely important. Focus on doing something really well before you try and take it out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. And I think actually when we were researching Brazil, we spent some time together in Brazil, didn't we, Dan? Back in late 2010. So that was around the time we were getting very close to thinking about a project there. And as Steve mentioned, so relieved we didn't go down that route. There was obviously, it would have been a very interesting work-wise from a personal and organisational standpoint, but I would say the Lesotho project would be far worse off now had we been in other countries trying to run. It's a fairly complex project. I guess on my other point, one of the other challenges we have is to do our elevator pitch. Quite often sometimes you get 30 seconds, sometimes you get 2 minutes, but you have to try and pick one of the aspects of the programmatic work that we do, which is quite multi-layered, and you have to make that decision on the spot, and it's an acquired skill when you're trying to sell what you do, if you like. And for me, one of the other big challenges is working with the largest donors. Traditionally, they have their own agenda. And this is part of why we were so determined to make social enterprise work. So we work with many brilliant donors who have supported our own mission. But when you're typically working with maybe the government donors, they've obviously got their own agenda. And sometimes it feels like you're delivering their program for them. I think one of the things I'm proudest about that we've done over the years as an organisation is start to really be strict with the type of funding we accept. So we've got to the position now where, yes, I mean, we're all trying to raise funds and it's always a challenge, but we won't accept funding just because it's there. And that was definitely a sign of maturity from our organisational standpoint to say, hang on a minute, government donor, this is going to really stretch our resources. Yes, it's a lot of money, but it's not what our mission is. And I think that's a big challenge. And I understand why other organisations do it, but it's definitely a challenge that organisations face, whether they should take specific funding for those purposes.
And I'd say that that's a balance that has to be achieved, because I think if you're too inflexible, then you won't end up getting any funding. So I think you need to set your own parameters. So we've always had quite a clear vision about what we want to do, and that's transform the lives of young people in Lesotho. And we obviously don't want to get pulled too far away from that, but also funders do bring good perspectives, new ideas, things that maybe we hadn't thought of. And then sometimes you do need to be willing to change your focus slightly and learn from them as well. So yeah, very much about getting that balance right, and certainly not chasing the funding, that's for sure.
So what kind of other places have you taken them? So through the consultancy that you mentioned there, which other countries, we say for now, have felt the best practice come to life for them?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we started to have people approaching us, asking us for support in different parts of the world, and we turned that into a formal service called Kick4Life Assist over the last couple of years. And so for example, we've done curriculum development and coach training in partnership with the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy in Qatar around the 2022 World Cup. So we've done coach training in Pakistan there. And we're currently working with the UEFA Foundation for Children in Guinea and the Gambia, again around curriculum development and coach training. Even away from football, we did a great project last year with Chance to Shine, which is a cricket-based charity in the UK. So applying our methodology to cricket and training up coaches in the UK. And then alongside the programmatic stuff, also there's been quite a lot of interest with social enterprise. So with funding from Common Goal, we've been able to develop a service called Social Enterprise Assist, whereby we're supporting other organisations in street football world to develop their own income generating operations, which is really exciting. I've done some work in Ghana and Kenya. There's some projects going on South America and Asia Pacific as well. And yeah, because it's a big jump from being sport for development to being also a social enterprise. Obviously, we've done that journey. We've learned a lot of lessons, and hopefully we've got some useful things we can help other organisations with.
Amazing. And then the final bit for now that on the top of my mind that I need to have more details on, because I promise I will be coming, is the trip down to visit the project and experience and volunteer and be a part of, you know, the on ground. So, can you just explain a bit more for everyone how that works, what the involvement is, and what you actually do on the ground when you come over?
Yeah, I'll take that one as well. So, right from our very first personal experience in Africa in 2005, we saw there was potential for other people to share in what we'd experienced. So, one of the first fundraising trips we did, the first fundraising trip we did to Lesotho was 2007. We called it the Kick4Life All-Stars. And at that point, it was mainly people that we knew, our friends, who coming out to have a 2-week experience in Lesotho where they played football, but they also got involved in delivering some of the activities with full training and experienced the culture of Lesotho. And it was incredibly popular. And after that first one, we did another and so on. And then we've been doing them every year, every 18 months ever since. And it's a great way of fundraising and engaging people. So instead of just, I guess, going climbing a mountain, people are getting really involved in our charity. They're learning about what we do. They're actually getting involved. So when they go back to their normal lives, wherever that may be, in the UK and the US, they remain passionate about the organisation and committed to helping us. So some of the people who've started out by coming on one of our Kick4Life All-Stars trips, one of them's worked for us in Lesotho for 7 years. Others have carried on fundraising, introduced us to donors, or maybe just given a monthly donation ever since, you know, over a period of 10 years. So the impact of those trips are incredible. And I think because we've also got the social enterprises now, people stay at Kick4Life in the accommodation, they eat in the restaurant, and all that funding is being reinvested, cycled back into Kick4Life. So it's a great trip. You should come sometime, Dan.
Clever lads, aren't you? Yeah. Well, I've pledged it, haven't I, at the start of the year? So I'll be there.
Yeah.
Just can't plan too far ahead.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's truly inspiring because, and I can admit now as well, I already credit you guys in multiple places with the FBA when I'm, you know, talking about innovation in football to the students there. It's I think the Stadium for Life probably is going to be the big invention coming forward, which maybe you want to finish up with a few words on that as well in a minute. But you know, what you do, I think, truly is an inspiration for not only this sector to do more, but football as a whole. You know, I think everyone gets complacent and they need to be more open-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of points I think it's worth mentioning in terms of the final piece of our evolution, if you like. One is the football club itself, and the two, the impact of opening an office in the US has had quite an impact from a fundraising standpoint and a programmatic standpoint. So around the time we were looking at other countries, when we decided, look, let's just focus on Lesotho, we then decided, well, let's expand our fundraising into the US. And so I was able to move there at the time after I lived in Lesotho. And initially it was all about purely expanding the fundraising, and that's been pretty successful. But what we did learn, and I was completely naive to it, maybe growing up in Britain, it's not such a big thing, but about student athlete scholarships and the scale and the opportunity within all sports, but in football. I mean, I'd heard of the concept, but I didn't really know. I hadn't put two and two together with the opportunity that we had in Lesotho. So I started embedding myself in the soccer scene in the US, and found out that, you know, kids can go to university fully funded in the US if they, you know, meet minimum academic standards and are a good soccer player. And so we reached out to Right to Dream, Tom Vernon. I don't know if you know Tom, who'd been doing this for many years. They also have a much stronger elite football performance angle as well. But so I went out to see them, and we had a lot of discussions. They helped us a lot in terms of how we could design a program in Lesotho to really impact the lives of the kids and potentially get them into the US. Because from our standpoint, when we first started the organization, our mission was to transform the lives of kids in Lesotho. And we felt that while the health education and the other activities that we were doing is really, really helping, we had to ask ourselves, is it completely transforming their lives? So we obviously still do those other programs because they are very beneficial to those kids. But in my mind, taking a kid from age 12, supporting them with football, with academics, with their character development and life skills, going on a journey with them until they can get a scholarship in the US, supporting them through that entire process, and they're coming out at age 21, 22 with a fully funded university degree in the US, with the ultimate aim of creating a positive role model for someone in Lesotho. Obviously, they'll seize their own personal opportunity, but then they can go back to Lesotho as a role model and really have a long-term impact in society. So that's essentially what we did. We set up a fully residential academy in Lesotho. And we're still halfway through that first batch of kids, but at the same time, we were able to send 5 kids to the US who are currently in the US on scholarships, 3 boys and 2 girls. The 2 girls are the first ever Lesotho female student athletes from Lesotho in the US ever, which is a fantastic story. And just from that standpoint, just seeing that transformation, and it's much going back to the elevator pitch. When you first meet someone, you've got 30 seconds to say we're completely transforming an individual's life, even though we're doing a ton of other stuff. It's quite beneficial to to get that in there quite quickly. So that was definitely an interesting part of how we evolved as an organisation. It's had a big part of what we do on the ground. I know, Steve, you want to touch on how the football club evolved?
Yeah, so Kick4Life FC, I guess initially we were quite reticent about talking about elite football. I think certainly the sector back when we started was that the two couldn't be mixed. You couldn't mix sport for development and elite football, and that if you started talking about any elite element, then you might compromise your credibility as a social change organisation. But I think we were one of a number of organisations that has helped to challenge that perception. And so back in 2009, we had a group of boys initially who really formed themselves into their own team called Kick4Life and started playing in the leagues. And we didn't really pay that much attention to it until they were on the verge of being promoted to the Lesotho Premier League. And we were starting to see that this team was helping to raise awareness of our organisation. It was creating role models. It had potential for revenue generation for the charity. So we actually rebranded from Kick4Life to Kick4Life FC to become the world's first football club exclusively dedicated to social change. So pursuing success on the pitch, but to leverage that for our ultimate bottom line of transforming lives in Lesotho. And it certainly served that purpose. And very significantly, we've of course got Kick4Life ladies team, which is one of the top teams out there, and the participants in the club, the ladies team, are actually driving forward our women's empowerment activity, and through a program called Girls United, doing some fantastic work. Lesotho remains a male-dominated country, and they're really at the front line of changing perception, showing that girls are allowed to play football, girls can play sport, and that actually that translates to the rest of society, equality in the workplace, at home, in relationships. So yeah, really, really exciting. And of course, we've got the Stadium of Life project coming up. So the next phase of our centre development is to create a stadium purpose-built for social change. So with inbuilt health testing facilities, with an 11-a-side pitch where young people can access various programmes, where fans can come and watch Kick4Life FC, an extension of our social enterprise model. So we had a big launch event in London back in February. Got some great momentum behind that project just before the coronavirus thing happened. So that's, I guess, currently on hold until it's over, but we're still very much determined to make it happen and create a truly unique place where football's being used to change lives on various ways. So very exciting.
Incredible. Amazing. Yeah, I love it. Sign me up. Good. Thank you guys so much for your time. I think it's super interesting to hear it, from your own mouths, as opposed to through the book or through other videos. It's great to have this out there. If anyone has got any questions or points or wants to know more, please first of all comment below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But do look at the links, go through the website to see all of the activities that are going on, and if you can get involved, please do. I'm sure it would change your life as well. And I've just realised as well, I completely stole your tagline here for the title of this, Changing Lives Through Football. So it's added promotion of what you're doing.
There's a former tagline. Do we still use it?
Oh, okay, it's still somewhere on the website. That's all right. But no, thank you guys. I really appreciate your time, and continue doing what you're doing, because it's inspiring the whole football industry. I can assure you that.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, final word. Big credit to the rest of the Kick4Life team. So all of our staff and team in Lesotho, incredible, and our supporters around the world, thank you. Kick4Life's all about a community of people, and thank you to everyone who's been a part of that journey.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone for watching, and remember, all you need is a ball.